Shalom to the elect of Israel, to the hopeful elect of Israel, you Hebrew Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indian, and Haitians. Got to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, the Most High, the Heavenly Father. His Hebrew name is Yahweh, not Yahweh, not Jehovah, not God, not Elohim, not Most High, not Lord, not Jah, not Yah, not Ahia. It's Yahweh. His only begotten son name is, in the Hebrew, Yahweh Shai. Not Yahshua, not Yeshua, not Jesus Christos, not Jesus Christ, not Serapis Christus, not Yeshaya, not Yahushua. It's Yahweh Shai. So got to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rikad Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, who teach well, and a sincere salutation to all the Akim pushing this truth and believing this truth throughout the four winds of the earth, the entire world, waking up the hopeful elect. And shalom to the Akwaf who are listening and learning, the few sisters who are listening and learning. I'm Isaiah from the GMS Orlando camp, coming into another lesson in true facts, faith, and edification, another daily edification. Lord's willing, this be edifying. And this is because thou hast spoiled many nations. Lord willing, this be edifying.
With Rick Sanchez.
And hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez. To those of you who are watching us from all over the world, either on regular TV or on the portable TV app, we're so glad that you're there. We're glad you've joined us. Two countries, both adversaries of the United States, have decided to push back against Uncle Sam today. Essentially, Iran and Venezuela are telling the U.S. State Department and the Trump White House, go ahead, try and stop us if you can. Take a look at this video. Watch this. See this? What you're seeing right there is an oil tanker from Iran in open waters heading for Venezuela. And as you can see in the video, it's being escorted by a Venezuelan naval warship. You're going to see that just as we pull out here. Hold on. There it is. See it right there? Now, why would an oil tanker need to be escorted by a gunship, right? And the reason is this. The United States has threatened to stop the tankers from reaching Venezuela, a country where citizens are waiting in line for hours because there's a shortage of fuel. So let me show you a map of what we're talking about that's taking place here. Here's a map of 5 ships that are making their way all the way from over here in Iran to Venezuela. And the first 2 ships, by the way, the Fortune and the Forest, they've already arrived in Venezuela. And the remaining ships, that's the Petunia, the Faxon, and the Clavel, sorry, all 3 of those are still in mid-ocean. They're following behind. They could arrive today. They could arrive tomorrow, unless the United States makes good on its promise or its threat to stop them. But as we look at this map depicting essentially more than half of the world, amazingly, we look at a journey that's long and arduous to get refined fuel and chemicals from Iran all the way to Venezuela. So we're left with this question, why? Right? Why would they do that? Venezuela has more oil than just about any country in the world. Some of the most oil reserves in the world. Why do they need fuel from all the way over here? So we called on the Venezuelan ambassador, and I asked him that question, and here's how he responded.
The Trump administration has threatened and coerced and scared away almost every single international corporation from Venezuela. So they are scared to sell us any kind of equipment, any kind of spare parts to work in our oil industry. So we are now not just buying fuel, we are buying chemical components to start up again our refinery. So we will be able to refine our own fuel from now on.
So it comes down to, as you heard him say, being able to refine the oil, right? In other words, you can have all the oil in the world, But if you can't turn it into usable fuel, there's little that you can do with it, right? Venezuela's refinery capabilities have collapsed. And while the United States and its interference and its sanctions that are aimed clearly at destroying the Venezuelan economy is undeniable, critics of the Maduro government also point out that they deserve some blame because the country's state oil company has mismanaged and underinvested to make sure they could continue to refine. So look, regardless of the reason for this, Venezuela needs fuel. And Iran, like the rest of the world's oil producers, has too much of it on their hands. And that's why the two countries have worked out this deal, a deal the United States is threatening to quash. So here's the question. As we look at this tanker, surrounded by the naval vessel, just how far will it go, the United States, in this high-stakes game of chicken that is being played out in international waters between three countries who sooner or later seem destined for some kind of showdown?
This is Joelle, chapter 3, and verse 10. Beat your plowshares and the swords and your pruning hooks and the spears. This is the point. Let the weak say, I am strong. These nations is not weak anymore, man. And they don't care what the bullies say, man. See, Babylon the Great have been the bully on the whole entire earth, the entire planet, for the longest. Now, nobody is scared of the bully anymore, man. Why? Because the Lord have opened up his armory, and Babylon the Great is not the only nation that has ICBMs, man. Nuclear capability, man. Every nation has it now. So now, these nations, hey, they saying basically what they saying, hey, you said you was gonna intervene, you threatening us to not transport from Iran to Venezuela. What you gonna do? Joelle 3 and 10 again. Beat your plowshares and the swords and your pruning hooks and the spears. Plowshares and pruning hooks are for tools for agriculture, man. The Lord saying, turn that into military arsenal, man. So these nations, it's like they don't care what the bullies say, man. We ready. Let the weak say, I am strong. They are strong nations now. They are not weak anymore, man. So they are not threatened. What Babylon the Great say, man? They don't care about that. Your philosophies, your policies, your legislation, your democracies, your draconian law, your sanctions does not scare these nations anymore, man. Why? Let the weak say, I am strong. They are strong nations now, and they don't care, man.
This is the news with Rick Sanchez, where we drill down on stories like this that many in the corporate media ignore because we do believe it's time to do news again. All right, here's the list of the questions we think you'll be asking tomorrow. Is the United States heading toward a showdown with Iran and Venezuela over fuel shipments? Will convicted felons be able to vote now in Florida? And what's the latest with a territorial dispute between India and China? But let's go ahead and get started in Venezuela, where the lines of cars backed in front of gas stations can sometimes stretch for a mile, and oftentimes they last for more than a day. Imagine waiting in line for an entire day just to be able to fill up your car with gas because there's no way to refine the oil that is sitting in your own backyard. The Venezuela story is a story of economic hardship combined with hardball politics. The U.S. has not hidden its desire to topple the government, but would our government go so far as to create a blockade to stop Venezuelans from receiving fuel? Would they? Joining us now Live is reporter Lucas Corner. He is the editor of Venezuela Analysis. He follows this story and is good enough to join us now to bring us more on this story. Lucas, bring us up to date. So, why is it that Venezuela has needed to strike this deal with Iran? It still remains a critical question, right? And doesn't it look almost weak in the eyes of the world if it can't supply fuel for its own people, if it's one of the largest, has one of the largest oil reserves in the entire world?
Sure. I think the key factor is that notwithstanding, as you mentioned, misinvestment, issues with corruption and strategic planning that have in many ways harmed Venezuela's oil production in recent years, any objective analysis will reach the conclusion that it's the U.S. sanctions right now which are absolutely devastating what's left of the oil industry and preventing Venezuela from importing necessary gasoline. Let's remember that Venezuela's national oil company, PDVSA, has its largest subsidiary in the United States called Citgo, which is being seized, which is in the process of being auctioned off to bondholders and to the Canadian mining giant Crystal X, and Venezuela would send its heavy crude to the Gulf oil refineries, and which would import, and then would in turn import refined gasoline. It is unable to do that since last year, since January 2019, due to the U.S. oil embargoes. The United States likewise has deepened those measures, imposing sanctions on the Russian energy giant Rosneft, forcing it to leave the country in March, and Rosneft was carrying 60% of Venezuela's crude exports, and it was in turn coordinating the import of gasoline. So this has left a void in which Venezuela cannot import the gasoline it needs, and it can't get the spare parts it likewise needs to repair its refineries. So it's in a very tough situation, and the Iranians have filled the void, not only helping Venezuela import gasoline, but also sending technical teams and spare parts to repair the country's refineries.
So it looks like.
And that's the point, the reason for this lesson, man. Babylon the Great have spoiled many nations, man. You have stepped on nations because you is the bully of the earth, man. Because you are the Job 9 and 24s, man. This is where they rule from. Babylon the Great. You have been a bully. You putting sanctions on these nations, man. So guess what? What you're doing is backing these nations into a corner, and they all going to join together, man. That's why Obadiah 1 and 7, man. Okay? They of thy confederacy have deceived thee, man, and prevailed against thee. Future prophecy, man. Because you putting your sanctions and you backing them in a corner, leaving them no options but to leave you as an ally, man. And they joining to Russia and Iran and China, man. Which those are the three power nations on that side of the world, man. When Russia, China, and Iran join together, it's gonna be a real problem, man.
Like an easy deal. I mean, let's face it, Iran has way too much fuel on its hands because of what's going on in the world with a lack of demand. Venezuela needs it, so they've struck a deal. But in comes Uncle Sam saying, no, you're not allowed to do this, and if we have to stop you, we're going to stop you in mid-ocean.
See, and that's going to be the thing, man. That's what they want, man. Iran wants you to do that, man. Because it's going to be a battle, man. You ain't finna stop them. They helping out Venezuela, man. Which is eventually these prophecies in this Bible going to play out, man, when it comes to World War III. The World War III prophecies is playing out, and these jakes is running around here bugging out about this guy, George Floyd, man.
Serious is this threat, do you believe, and how serious is it being taken by either party?
I think think it's very serious. We should heed the words of President Trump, who last week said that he had Venezuela, quote unquote, surrounded, and that the United States, he has made repeated threats of military action against Venezuela. And we saw this recent effort by U.S.-based mercenary contractors to try to topple the Maduro government, in which it appears the Trump administration had some kind of foreknowledge, or if they denied direct involvement, but they might have had indirect involvement. So there definitely is very high stakes. The Trump administration has made it clear its intention to overthrow the Maduro government by any means necessary, as they have repeatedly stressed. So I think it's a very high stakes situation, but so far it seems like the political cost of condemning Venezuelans to these utterly terrible conditions, which they continue to do by imposing more and more sanctions, seem to be deterring the U.S. from taking military action against these Iranian dictators.
I know you've spent a lot of time in Venezuela. Are you Venezuelan yourself? You are, aren't you?
No, I'm from Philadelphia. I'm completely from the U.S.
How long have you spent or lived covering Venezuela now? How many years have you been there?
I lived in Venezuela for 5 years until the start of this year, and I have not been able to get back due to the current COVID situation and flights. But yeah, I have all of my contacts, and I have family in Venezuela right now.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we accredit you as the right person to ask this question to. As far as you know, how bad is the situation in Venezuela right now? I reported a while ago that people actually wait in line for more than a day outside of a gas station to be able to move their car incrementally to be able to get a little bit of gas. Is that true?
I mean, the problem is currently is that given that there is no real gasoline available, kind of different private individuals and criminal groups have really, a black market has emerged and charging people excessive $2 or $3 a liter for gasoline in Caracas, which was unheard of, because Caracas has always had gasoline, even in the worst of last year and the year before. So it's a very dangerous situation, and there's a lot of pressure on the government to regularize the situation of gasoline, actually charge reasonable international prices, for example 50 cents a liter, instead of reverting to its previous policies of having the lowest gasoline prices in the world, a fraction of a cent for a liter, which is unsustainable.
We're down to about 20 seconds, but just a quick answer if you could. Generally speaking, the people of Venezuela blame A, the Maduro government, B, the Trump administration. Which is it?
I think that they blame both, because I think that they're clearly the mismanagement of the government is undeniable, but it also is undeniable that the Trump administration is callously worsening, exacerbating in an unprecedented way the suffering of the Venezuelan people. Venezuela has never, ever had these kinds of gasoline shortages, not since the 2002 oil lockout, which the United States-backed opposition sought to shut down the oil industry. So this is definitely an unprecedented situation, which the United States is worsening to a deep extent.
Lucas Corner, you're an excellent guest to talk to on this. We certainly
See, it's the hammer of the whole earth, man. Because thou hast spoiled many nations, man. That's why the Lord gonna put the spirit on them to come against thee, man, with their arrows. Let's get this.
And hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez. To all of you who are watching from all over the world, whether you're doing so on regular TV or on portable TV, we are so glad that you are there. Today, the United States will likely hit the inglorious milestone of being the first and only country in the world to suffer 100,000 coronavirus deaths. What are the real numbers? We're going to break that down for you. We're going to tell you. We're also going to show you just how ugly things have gotten overnight in Hong Kong. I don't know if you've seen some of those videos yet. But we're going to begin with a showdown between China and India. Yes, China and India. 800 to 1,000 Chinese soldiers have crossed over into India. The territory is disputed, but it's being called the worst border tension between these two countries in decades now. Let me do this. Let me go over to the map over here on the wall so we can show you the area that we're talking about. This is the region, I think we've mentioned this to you before, it's a region called Ladakh, right? It's described as one of the most beautiful places on earth. It's magnificent. Google it. You'll freak out. It's so pretty. But like many beautiful things, everybody seems to want a part of it. It's been a disputed region now since 1947 between Pakistan and India and China. all holding claim, but it's administered, and this is important in this dispute, it's administered by India. And that has generally been respected by, all three sides until now. Take a look at what's going on there right now. Let me show you these pictures. You see these this is a satellite image from the Australian Policy Institute. It purports to show how 800 to 1,000 Chinese troops have crossed the border, right, and seem to be camping out now or holding their ground on the Indian side of the Galwan River Valley. Now, what you'll notice is you're not seeing troops. They're actually encampments, right, that they have now built in this region, right? Exactly why the Chinese troops have crossed over, not exactly clear. There's a lot of theories on it. What is clear is this that you're seeing right here in these satellite images, man, this is not sitting well with India. Not its military, not its media. Look at how this situation is being described by the network India Today. Take a listen.
Look closely at these pictures. They are the first images from the high-altitude Galwan River Valley in Ladakh. The first visual evidence of China's force buildup in a serious new standoff with India. Chinese durable tents, heavy-duty trucks, and earth-moving machinery. Clear evidence that this isn't your everyday standoff. China plans to stretch this one out.
China plans to stretch this one out, says the host. Now, that's India's version. China's version is a little different, saying perhaps India has been pushing the envelope in the region, building it up. Indian military sources say they will engage in aggressive patrolling of this area. Aggressive patrolling. Well, there's also, by the way, there's also some reports that there are talks that have started between both countries, the military officials in this area, to try and somehow settle this dispute. But look, there's no question that these skirmishes that have now been taking place for more than a month, we told you about it from time to time, not like this. This is escalation. The situation is escalating, and the situation is happening just as relations between China and the U.S. continue to sour as well. So,
why is this happening, man? You just heard him. Because of Babylon the Great, man. That's why, man. This is Job 9 and 24. It reads, the earth, the entire earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? They covered the faces of Yahweh, because they got over there in the 16th chapel, the finger of God touching the finger of Adam, which is Adam and God are both painted white. He covered the face of the judges thereof, which you got King David, Solomon, the Israelites, Moses. So he covered the face of the judges, Yahweh and Yahushua, thereof, and the Israelites, all 12 tribes. If not, where and who is he? The earth is given to the hand of the wicked. Now, when you go to Malachi, chapter 1, and verse 4, it reads, whereas Edom said, we are impoverished, when they was in the caves, we will return and build the desolate places, which they did, because the earth was given into their hand. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down, and they shall call them the border of wickedness. When you go into the word border, their territory, man, which is the earth. So the reason these nations, all these nations are in an uproar, is because of the Job 9 and 24s, man. That's why.
this certainly is the type of story that we want to drill down on. This is the news with Rick Sanchez, where we literally drill down on these types of stories because we do think it's time to do news again. South China Sea. How many conflicts can Beijing handle all at once? Where does the U.S. rank when it comes to COVID-19 deaths? Iran and Venezuela ignoring U.S. threats. What, if anything, will the White House do about it? Okay, we explained to you a little while ago what's happening in the dispute between China and India. Now, let's turn to the conflict in Hong Kong. The images, especially during this coronavirus epidemic when people are supposed to stay away from each other, of protesters beating people up and ravaging the city and being chased by police. It's kind of amazing to look at, isn't it? It's happening because China announced new security rules for Hong Kong, which has protesters and the U.S. angry and irritated. Here to explain, RT correspondent Alex Mihailovich.
You see, what the U.S. is pissed off for about how China run their country, man. You see, this is the hammer of the whole earth, man, because they have spoiled many nations.
With sirens blaring, Hong Kong police deployed water cannons and tear gas to disperse sometimes violent protesters.
No country will ever turn a blind eye to the illegal acts that may jeopardize its national security. It is the consensus of the international community which allows no double standards.
Ongoing demonstrations in the city-state of 7.4 million started in June last year, when the Hong Kong government introduced a bill that would have allowed the extradition of criminal suspects and fugitives to mainland China. Within a week, the government gave in to demonstrators and the bill was quashed. But the protests continued, with new demands being added to the roster. China's government has blamed outside interference for the unrest, and after nearly a year of defiant actions, the Chinese government rolled out its plan to adopt laws bolstering security and public order in the semi-autonomous territory. Defying coronavirus-related social distancing bans, protesters have flooded the streets to demonstrate against the proposed legislation that would ban sedition, foreign interference, and treason in Hong Kong. Over the weekend, 180 people were arrested as rioters often outnumbered and sometimes violently pushed back police in protest hotspots.
You see, he say ban sedition. Man, it's gonna be sedition among men everywhere, man. What you see going on? It's going on in North America, it's going on in South America, it's going on in Central America, man. It's going on around the world, man.
According to the South China Morning Post, some of the demonstrators were seen waving U.S. flags, while others could be heard cursing at police and chanting, "Hong Kong independence, the only way."
Wow.
Government officials say that while the draft legislation is designed to prevent, frustrate, and punish threats to national security in Hong Kong, most of the city's population and investors have little to worry about as the new law moves forward. The Chinese government seems determined to approve the law before the annual National People's Congress concludes later this week. For News with Rick Sanchez, I'm Alex Mihailovich.
All right, joining us right now is former British MP George Galloway. George, I'm just thinking to myself, my goodness, with everything going on with the coronavirus pandemic, you would think they would choose a different time to protest, and certainly in such a physical way as that videos seem to depict. What's your take on this?
Well, the question you asked right at the beginning is the question. How many conflicts can Beijing handle at the same time? And that's precisely why all these questions are now being asked, to see the answer. How many can they handle at the same time? The US has got strategic bombers and warships in the South China Sea. Mike Pompeo just visited Taiwan. Taiwan has now interfered in the Hong Kong issue. The Hong Kong issue is well and truly back. The issue of Tibet will not be far behind. The Muslim question of the Uyghurs in the Xinjiang province has been raging throughout Ramadan, as it does every Ramadan, every year. So there's a full court press, as I put it to you before, on China, and it's precisely to see how many of these challenges China can handle at the same time. All the signs are that they will not allow this Hong Kong situation to run much longer. And I think they're right about that. No country would tolerate this level of violence amongst demonstrators, least of all in the middle of a pandemic. That's quite extraordinary. You're supposed to be 2 meters apart, but you're actually pounding people into the ground because they disagree with your slogans, disagree with your challenge to the authority of the government. So I think that China is going to deal toughly with this, and any country worthy of the name country would do the same.
When it comes to conflicts and pressure, I would suggest buyer beware. I was born in Cuba, so I know a lot about the politics of Cuba, and I know a lot about the relationship between the...
You see that? India and China soldiers exchange physical blows in border skirmish. You see this? Why is this happening, man? Because the hammer of the whole earth, man. Because they have spoiled many nations.
United States and Cuba. And what I seemed to learn from that was that when you push somebody up against a corner, when you continually pressure a country, usually what they do is they retrench. They
Right.
go back. They don't do what you want.
Right.
It essentially either, best case scenario, is gives you a stymie, or you lose all avenues of communication with them. My fear is if you push China enough, eventually they're going to do the same thing. What's your take?
Yes, I mean, I think that's absolutely correct and a very acute observation. But in this case, that's what the US wants. They know that they cannot defeat China, they cannot destroy China or break it up. They just want to slow its advance because its advance to being the number one economy, the number one armed force, the number one soft power force is inexorable. They just want to slow it down. And the way to do that is to cause multiple fissures based on anything you can. Tibet, the Uyghurs, the Muslims, Hong Kong, the India-China conflict, the Taiwan issue. Just set fires and have them busy putting out fires in their own country and on the borders of their own country, rather than concentrating on the rise to the top dog position in the world.
You remember what your mom and your dad and my mom and my dad, who probably didn't know each other, told us, though, about setting fires and what happens when you set fires?
Yes, don't play with matches.
Yeah.
I was brought up on that rubric, and that's a point you and I have touched on before. Because it's all very well, sending bombers and warships to somebody else's backyard. But what if something goes wrong?
Exactly.
What if a rogue element? What if an accident? What if the amor propria is pushed so far that the other side actually has to, or feels it has to, take action in retaliation? These are highly dangerous maneuvers, especially when we've got plenty of others going on in the Persian Gulf, off the coast of Venezuela, and so on.
Yeah. George Galloway, as usual, great.
Hey, it's going to bring about World War III, man. This is the chessboard of the Heavenly Father Yahweh, man. He's moving these pieces, man. This is Micah 2:1. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand. And they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man in his house, even a man in his heritage. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, against this family, do I devise an evil. What family, man? Edom, from which ye shall not remove your necks, neither shall ye go haughtily, for this time is evil. And this is for educational purposes only. Verse 4, in that day shall one take up a parable against you, and lament with a doleful lamentation, and say, we be utterly spoiled. He have changed the portion of my people. How hath he removed it from me? Turning away, he hath divided our field. You did this to the Israelites and to the other heathen nations, man. This is Habakkuk chapter 2. in verse 5. Yeah, because he transgressed about wine. He is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gather unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. See, the reason these things is going on, because of the hammer of the earth, man. Verse 8 is my point. Because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. Woe to him that covet an evil covetousness to his house, that he may set his nest on high. And we know who it is talking about. That he may be delivered from the power of evil. Thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people, and have sinned against thy soul. This is verse 15. Woe unto him that giveth his neighbor drink, that putteth thy bottle to him, and maketh him drunk also, that thou mayest look on their nakedness. Thou art filled with shameful, thou art filled with shameful glory. Drink thou also, Jeremiah 49:12, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord's right hand shall be turned to thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory. Why? Because how you have did these nations, man. You have spoiled these nations. Jeremiah 51 in verse 7. Babylon had been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad, man. These nations is pissed off with you devils, man. This is Jeremiah 51:13. O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. It's verse 24. And I will render to Babylon and to all the inhabitants of Chaldea all their evil that they have done in Zion in your sight, saith the Lord Yahweh. Behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, saith the Lord, which destroyeth all the earth, and I will stretch out my hand upon thee, and roll thee down from the rocks, and will make thee a burnt mountain. This is Jeremiah 50 in verse 16. It reads, cut off the sword from Babylon, and him that handleth the sickle in the time of harvest. For fear of the oppressing sword, they shall turn every one to his people, and they shall flee every one to his own land. And that's what's going on, man. Obadiah 1:7. Matter of fact, let me read that. It's Obadiah chapter 1 and verse 7. It reads, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. To do what? To fight, man. You're going to have to go to war with your allies. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee, and there is none understanding in them. So, the time is coming when you're going to have to go to war with your allies, man. They will bring you to the border. Jeremiah 50:31. It reads, behold, I am against thee, O thou most proud, saith the Lord Yahweh, power of hosts. For thy day is come, the time that I will visit thee, and the most proud shall stumble and fall, and none shall raise him up. And I will kindle a fire in his city, and it shall devour all round about him. It's verse 35. A sword is upon the Chaldeans, saith the Lord Yahweh, and upon the inhabitants of Babylon, and upon her princes, and upon her wise men. A sword is upon the liars, and they shall dote. A sword is upon her mighty men, and they shall be dismayed. A sword is upon her horses, upon their horses, many of power, and upon their chariots, and upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of her. That's why the Lord say, flee out of the midst of Babylon, man. Be not partakers of her sins. And they shall become as women. A sword is upon her treasures, and they shall be robbed. A drought is upon her waters, and they shall be dried up. For it is the land of graven images. They are made upon their idols. Yeah, man. Babylon the Great. This is 2nd Ezra 11 and 39. It reads, Are not thou it that remainest of the fourth beast, whom I made to reign in my world, that the end of their times may come through them? And the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past, and had power over the world with great fearfulness, and over the whole compass of the earth, which made wicked oppression so long time, dwelt he upon the earth with deceit. For the earth hast thou not judged with truth, for thou hast afflicted the meek, thou hast hurt the peaceable, thou hast loved the liars, like I just read in Jeremiah, and destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, and hast cast down the walls of such as did thee no harm. Therefore is thy wrongful dealings come up to the highest, and thy pride unto the mighty. The highest also have looked upon the proud times, and behold, they are ended, and his abominations are fulfilled. And therefore appear no more thy eagle, nor thy horrible wings, nor thy wicked feathers, nor thy malicious heads, nor thy hurtful claws, nor all thy vain body, that all the earth may be refreshed, and may return, being delivered from thy violence, and that she may hope for the judgment and mercy of him that made her. Now, let's get this. Daniel chapter 2 and verse 36. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven have given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And whithersoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the heaven, have he given into thine hand, and have made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold, Nebuchadnezzar. After thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee. That was talking about the Medo-Persian. And another third kingdom of brass, which is Alexander the Great, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron. Now the third kingdom was the start of Edom ruling the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces, and subdue all things. And as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. Now, I just read in 2nd Ezra 11, it said what? No more thy hurtful claws. This is talking about the Roman Empire. Okay, the revised Roman Empire, which is Babylon the Great. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces, and subdue all things, as the iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. These are the kingdoms mingling together. Through what? The beast, man. EU, NATO, and the whore that sits on the beast. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, So the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sowest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seeds of men. Who is going to mingle themselves? Edom. But they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is mixed with miry clay. Now at the bottom of 2nd Ezra, chapter 11, verse 46, it said this: that all the earth may be refreshed and may return, being delivered from thy violence, and that she may hope for the judgment and mercy on him that made her. The earth is going to refresh and rejoice. It tell you that in Isaiah. I'm going to read it. Isaiah 11, starting at verse 5. Because the world and everything in it is sick of you Romans, you Greeks, you Babylonians, you Egyptians, ruling the earth in wickedness, man. Isaiah 14 and 5. The Lord hath broken the staff for the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continuous stroke. He that ruleth the nations, he that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted and none hindereth. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. That's why I read in 2nd Ezra 11 and 46. This is what it's talking about. Yet the trees rejoice, yet the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no fellow has come up against us. Who's cutting down the trees? These Romans, these Greeks, these Babylonians, these Egyptians, these Idumeans. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It have raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? You see, these nations is sick of it, man. They tired of it. Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vows, the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. And the Lord said, what? You have not known how the hammer of the whole earth broke asunder? Because the Lord laid a snare for you, man. Verse 16. They that see thee shall now look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of the prisoners? All the kings of the nations, even all of them, lay in glory, every one in his own house. These nations can't wait till you be taken down, man. They can't wait, man. This Jeremiah 51 and 23. It reads, so like Jeremiah 50 and 23. No. Yeah. Jeremiah 50 and 23. How was the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How was Babylon become a desolation among the nations? I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou was not aware. Thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord. And these nations is tired of Babylon the Great, ruling their nations in wickedness, man. This is Isaiah 33 and 1. It reads, woe to thee that spoilest, and thou was not spoiled, and dealest treacherously, and they dealt not treacherously with thee. When thou shalt cease to spoil, thou shalt be spoiled. And when thou shalt make an end to deal treacherously, they shall deal treacherously with thee. Why? Because the Lord hath opened up his armory, man. And close with this. Revelation 17 and 15. It reads, and he said unto me, the waters which thou sowest where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Who is this? Babylon the Great, man. This is Babylon the Great. Right here. Jeremiah 50. And let me see. In 38. A drought is Salakia. It's it's another verse I wanted. Was it 51? Let me see. Salakia was one more that I wanted. Right. Jeremiah 50:37. A sword is upon their horses and upon their chariots and upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of thee. You see? It's all the mingled people that are in the midst of thee. So when you go back to Revelation 17 and 15, and he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So, going back to Jeremiah again, it said what? All the mingled people, man. Let's read it again. First Jeremiah 50:37. A sword is upon their horses, meaning their power, all their power. That's why it's in Isaiah 14, their pomp is brought down to the grave. And upon their chariots, and upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of her. You see? Let me play these last couple, man. Let's play these.
Hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez. To all of you who are watching from all over the world, whether you're doing so on regular TV or on portable TV, we are so glad that you are there. Today, the United States will likely hit the inglorious milestone of being the first and only country in the world to suffer 100,000 coronavirus deaths. What are the real numbers? We're going to break that down for you. We're going to tell you. We're also going to show you just how ugly things have gotten overnight in Hong Kong. I don't know if you've seen some of those videos.
Oh, actually, I played. They're just a short version of the one I played. Let me play this. This is the one I wanted.
More than 2 weeks after a botched beachfront invasion on the shores of Venezuela, 2 U.S. mercenaries captured by Venezuelan military forces have again publicly admitted they had the backing from the U.S. Meantime, on Wednesday, a special remote hearing of a United Nations Security Council was held over accusations that the U.S. was behind that failed coup attempt. But while the U.S. continues to deny it supported the operation, it did have some choice words for Russia. RT's Rachel Blevins is joining us now to discuss the latest on this. So, Rachel, how did this hearing even come about?
So Russia was actually the country calling for this hearing based on a letter that was submitted to the UN Security Council by Venezuela, which was calling for some sort of response to this attempted attack on their government. Take a listen to a portion of that letter.
I quote, "Armed groups of mercenaries and terrorists, organized, trained, financed, and protected by the governments of the Republic of Colombia and the United States of America, illegally entered the Venezuelan territory."
Now, the U.S. ambassador to the UN argued that they never should have even considered the letter in the first place because the U.S. does not recognize Nicolas Maduro as the president of Venezuela. Here's what else she had to say.
See, this Jeremiah 49 and 20. Therefore, hear the counsel of the Lord Yahweh that he have taken against Edom and his purposes that he have proposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. The earth is moved at the noise of their fall, at the cry. The noise thereof was heard in the Red Sea. You see? Going into Joelle 2 and 20, man. Okay? As a matter of fact, let me read that real quick. But I will remove far off from you the northern army and would drive him into a land barren and desolate, with his face toward the east sea, the Persian Gulf, and his hinder part toward the utmost sea, which is the Red Sea. They're going to push you back, man. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he have done great things. Read this one again. Jeremiah 49 and 21. The earth is moved at the noise of their fall, at the cry. The noise thereof was heard in the Red Sea. The battle of Armageddon, man.
The letter from the illegitimate Maduro regime that prompted today's meeting is, as such letters always are, a long-winded compilation of fantastical accusations and demonstrable falsehoods. Unfortunately, for the second time in less than a month, our Russian colleagues have indulged their client regime's habit of blaming others for its appalling choices.
So in addition to denying those allegations, the U.S. is also arguing the blame should be on Russia for taking this letter as credible in the first place.
Wow. Okay, so then how has Russia responded, or have they?
Well, the Russian deputy minister to the UN argued that if this is a case where the U.S. had no involvement whatsoever in this operation, then why was it led by two American citizens who just happened to be targeting the same president the Trump administration has been trying to overthrow for more than a year now? Take a listen to what he said.
U.S. authorities claim that they have nothing to do with this. We would be glad to believe them, but fail to explain that according to the contract, two American citizens were planning to take hostage of legitimate Venezuelan president and bring him to the U.S. For what purpose, may I ask?
Now, this operation was led by Green Beret veteran Jordan Goudreau, who spent months looking for investors, claiming his goal was to overthrow the Venezuelan government and then secure the oil fields, which would lead to a lucrative return on investment. He claimed he had contacts in D.C., the backing of the State Department, and that he was working with opposition leader Juan Guaido, who has had the full support of the Trump administration. Now, the attempt was carried out on May 3rd, just 3 days after former National Security Advisor John Bolton took to Twitter to say, "Morning is coming to Venezuela again," and a few weeks after the State Department offered a $15 million reward for information on Maduro.
And now, Rachel, what about Iran? They are sending supplies, they're sending tankers over to Venezuela right now. What's the latest on that?
So the Iranian ambassador to Venezuela confirmed that that fleet of 5 tankers carrying more than $45 million worth of gasoline and supplies is still en route to Venezuela despite ongoing complaints from the U.S. And he argued that these are two independent sovereign nations and that they should be able to have trade and legal agreements with each other no matter the sanctions they are facing from the U.S. Now, Venezuela's defense minister also revealed the country's military plans to be ready and waiting to escort Iran's tankers as soon as they reach Venezuela's exclusive economic zone. And as we have been reporting, Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, but due to the ongoing economic crisis that has been compounded by sanctions from the U.S., they are unable to refine their own crude oil, so they have turned to other countries like Iran for help. And of course, the U.S. has been very against that, so now it remains to be seen if Washington is going to try to move forward and stop that exchange.
RT's Rachel Blevins, thank you for that update.
Thank you.
And for analysis on this ongoing situation, we will go to Danny Shaw. He's a professor of Latin American and Caribbean Studies at the City University of New York. Now, Professor, thanks for being with us. First, can you clear up any confusion for us as to why the U.S. is having such a problem with two countries, Iran and Venezuela, obviously, who are both sanctioned by the U.S., now doing business with one another? Is there any precedent for how to deal with a situation like this?
There's a long precedent of U.S. blockades against any country that doesn't do its bidding, but not in the middle of a global pandemic. And of course, Venezuela, Iran, any sanctioned, besieged country, any sovereign country has every right to trade on mutually beneficial terms. So these these 5 Iranian tankers, they don't just fly the flag of Iran, they really fly the flag of humanity. The entire global south, the entire third world who strives for a better way forward.
Now, Professor, what do you make of Venezuela's response thus far? I mean, having a military escort to move these vessels to shore. Doesn't that visually kind of amp up the tension?
No, that's called common sense. That's what any country would do. The Venezuelans have been under the strictest sanctions imaginable, like Cuba, like Zimbabwe, like the DPRK, like any country that Washington and Trump and Obama and both wings of the ruling class don't consider their neo-colony. These sanctions have been incredibly cruel. And at a time when the United States we have more than 1.5 million cases of COVID-19, more than 22,000 deaths here in New York City, how can the priority of Trump and the government be to overthrow a democratically elected government in Venezuela?
And the UN hasn't really been too vocal on this entire Venezuela issue. They've not fully backed Guaido and his camp, but also they haven't really full-throatedly backed Maduro either. And they're definitely not telling the U.S. to stand down on any action against Venezuela, including these botched, off-the-books attempts at a coup. So what's the UN's role here? What's their position?
The UN's response has been predictable, disappointing, tepid, liberal response. They've never out and out denounced these mercenaries who invaded Venezuela some 2 weeks ago. They've never denounced the 15 million bounty that the U.S. illegally and criminally put on the head of Nicolas Maduro, Diosdado Cabello, and the Bolivarian leadership. They've done very little to fight against these sanctions. These sanctions are incredibly cruel, intentionally denying the Venezuelan people gasoline, threatening to cut off WhatsApp, Facebook, Google, things that we in the imperialist countries would take for granted. And it's all designed to demoralize and dishearten the Venezuelan people, yet they continue to fight back by any means necessary against imperialism.
And Professor, you just a moment ago mentioned COVID-19. Obviously, today we are learning now that Latin America now has the fastest growing rate of COVID cases. Do you expect the U.S. to have any sympathy towards Venezuela as they battle this worldwide pandemic?
Quite the opposite. They've, at the very height of this global unprecedented pandemic, all they've done is tightened restrictions. Their plan has always been, these sanctions did not begin under Trump. They've existed for a long time under Democratic presidencies as well. And what they seek to do is completely drain Venezuela of its economic potential, create hardship, create mass migration, create hunger, stoke the flames of any sectarianism, and then CNN, Fox News, the whole gamut of U.S. mainstream channels and newspapers turns around, points the finger, Maduro, Maduro, Maduro. That's the only name they'll ever mention. They're probably not capable of mentioning any of the Bolivarian leadership, and they really don't have an understanding of how widespread Hugo Chavez, his influence in this Bolivarian revolution has been for 2 decades now.
See, they have ruled the earth with wicked oppression, man. And the nations is pissed off, man. The nations is pissed off, man. I gotta read this again, man. Obadiah, chapter 1, and verse 7, man. Hey, cause payback gonna be something serious, man. Obadiah 1 and 7. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border to fight, man, to go to war. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. Cause this is the chessboard of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shah. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in them. In him. You see? And you devils have ruled the earth from wickedness, man. And the nations is pissed off about it, man. Hey, the nations have drunk of your wine. Therefore, the nations are mad, man. Hey, because of you have spoiled many nations, these weak nations are strong now and they finna destroy you.
Professor, I have a little bit of time left. You just mentioned that Venezuela has actually been in the crosshairs of the U.S. before Donald Trump. Can you give us a brief breakdown on as to why?
Oh, I think we all know why, because it's got enormous natural resources, the mines, the oil, the same reason that Latin America has been in the crosshairs of Spanish colonialism, Portuguese colonialism, and then U.S. neocolonialism with its junior partners now for 5 centuries. So not much has changed. We
All
saw
right.
what the U.S. did to the Sandinista revolution in 1979. We saw the U.S. invasion of Grenada in 1983, the invasion of Panama in 1989. So the United States continues to have this 1824 Monroeist attitude that Latin America is their backyard. But the people of Latin America are sick of this. They're going to defend Telesur. They're going to defend Alba and the gains of the Bolivarian project.
See? The nations are mad, man. Hey, what did you do, man? Hey, it's going long. I don't even care, man. This is Psalms 55 and verse 20. He hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He hath broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords, man. It's nothing have changed with these devils, man. Nothing has changed with them, man. They the same ones that conquered the North American Indians, man. Okay? The same ones that conquered the Northern Kingdom, man, and the Southern Kingdom. Psalm 49:11, their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. These are the same people, man. Hey, so with that, gotta give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Rikah Korash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who rule well, who teach well, and the sincere say takes them to all the argument, pushing this truth and believing this truth. Throughout the four winds of the earth, the entire world, waking up the hopeful elect, and shalom to the outwalk who are listening and learning. The few sisters who are listening and learning. Lord willing, edifying. Till next time, I say shalom. Wa abad babal.